immediate left, Jeffrey Mikowicz, who's our vice chair, and to my immediate right, Robin Solomon, who is our chair pro tem. So I want to invite you to, hopefully it'll be an ambitious meeting, accomplish a lot of things. And I also want to acknowledge the presence of our president, senior vice president, and also our staff at HOC. And I also would like to take a moment, as we're starting the meeting immediately after Thanksgiving, to hope that everyone had a wonderful, delightful, and deliciously presented Thanksgiving meal, those who are present and those who are on Zoom. So it's always one of my favorite occasions to get together with family and friends. And so I hope you had a good Thanksgiving, leading to my favorite season, which is Christmas. So, and also want to acknowledge before the meeting the beautiful poinsettia plants that are here in front of us today. Very, very beautiful. I'd like to know where you bought those from. That they are nice size plants. But with that, let me proceed with the agenda for the meeting. The first item on the agenda is, in fact, the community forum. We have been advised that we have one person who's going to be on the telephone, Mr. Francis D'Souza, who is a landlord who wants to speak to the commission. So with that, I'm going to invite Mr. Souza to speak to us.
Hi, my name is Francis D'Souza. Can you all hear me all right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I am, let me give you a little bit quick background. I know I don't have too much time to talk, but I want to bring this to y'all. It's probably something you'll already know. So I'm a realtor, 20 years in the business. I manage some properties for others that are not in the state, some in the state, and I also have several properties of my own. Over the years, I rented to HOC. Predominantly, all my clients were HOC participants. But after COVID, I met with the director. I've had a slippery slope where a lot of the landlords just couldn't take it anymore. I mean, the properties is, you know, the reputation that HOC has with tenants damaging the properties, leaving the properties damaged more than they are. Now that we have this bill come out, it's the Stabilizing Act bill the deposit won't cover half the damages that tenants do. But what I'm calling for today is the utility bills. I've got tenants, at least 4 or 5 tenants, I have got one tenant with a $5,000 water bill. We have canceled the promise to pay, as WSSC has asked us to do that, because the tenants are paying minimum of $20 and generating a $300 a month bill. So the bill is just climbing, and they have no. I've got a tenant right now that has changed the locks on the door. I got a court enforcement issue. She called landlord tenant yesterday. Her water bill is $1,800, and if there's no compliance with HOC, the problem's going to only get worse. And that's why I wanted to come today and bring it to your attention. We're not getting any compliance, and the landlords are not being kept abreast as to what compliance the tenants are held to. I've had a tenant that over the years, I've been doing this for 25 years. I've had several tenants that have left the bill with the owner. I've just had one. We can't seem to locate her. I don't know where she's gone. HOC says she's not in the system, and she stiffed me with a $1,900 bill. So as the Stabilizing Act has come on, and it's going to be even more critical that we check other credentials, more credentials. Normally, we used to get a double deposit. We can't collect a double deposit anymore. That's what overrode any issues that the tenant may have had in the past. Kind of gave them a second chance. But if this is going to happen this way, then there's almost no room or gap for a second chance. So I urge the commission to hold compliance and treat the landlords a little bit better, because there are several landlords. I sold 14 houses last year, and I brought that to their attention, and the landlords have that's it, they're done. So they can't handle the damages, they can't handle the back payments, and just a headache to have clientele that abuse the home. So I urge the commission to look into this. I mean, the reputation over the past, and maybe you all don't heard it, maybe you haven't, but in the market, the reputation is not so good. So, I mean, I'm just bringing that to your attention to help you out. I myself debating, and the credit checks, the background's going to be most strenuous that you're going to have. And you know, when I have a home on the market, I can tell you I have nothing but HOC participants that are looking to rent. So the market is very heavy on the participants, but I mean, ultimately, if they don't have a high 700 credit score or money, income, I know some of these things are basic. We can't if HOC is paying 100%, but if they've been taken to court for breach or breach of a water bill or things like that, it's going to play heavy on HOC participants. So I urge you to kind of look after the landlords as much as you look after the tenants.
Mr. Zula, thank you very much for your comments. And I know that the staff addresses these matters when they're brought to our attention very immediately. And so I think that staff will continue to work with you. I would want to just, since we are on a public record, is not to leave the impression with our public, in fact, that HOC is allowing or supporting any kind of negative behavior that occurs in our properties by anyone. And so that, you know, generally, I think the majority of our tenants live effectively well, take care of our properties, and assume the responsibilities they have. And so I don't want, and so it's unfortunate you have had perhaps a different situation, and I'm sorry that you have confronted that, but I don't want to leave the impression as though that characterizes all the people who we serve in this county. Just not. Thank you very much. Think that we will now, if no one else has signed up for the community forum, I will now move on to a report from our resident advisory board. And I see Ms. Washington is here, and it's good to see you again. And so I invite you to come forward.
Good evening to the commissioner,
Good evening.
the judgment, and all the staff, everyone here. I'm gonna be a little bit informal. I just want to say I appreciate everyone at the gala. It was very nice. I was taken very emotionally. I would like to know more about that, the donation part of it and everything. So that's a little informal, but good evening, everyone. It's been on my mind. Good evening, everyone. I am Irma Washington, president of the Resident Advisory Board. I am here to share the update of the activities for the past month of November 2024. The board received a presentation from the compliance on Chapter 4, endorsing the proposed revisions and maintaining the waiting list. We, the RAD board, had a vigorous discussion, and asked many questions, which were addressed through the follow-up, through a follow-up email of compliance. The board received a presentation from HRD on Chapter 8, vouchers, insurances, and briefing and authorization to adapt a new policy for maintaining disabled voucher program. We were extremely happy to learn that the search team will now be at 100 days, where it was 90 days. It'll be extended to 100 days, no longer requiring extenuating circumstances like before you had to submit a lot of things if you were a resident, but now it's not. So instead of having it for the 90 days, you have it for the 120 days, which I felt was really good. At the next meeting on December the 16th, we will look forward to meeting with the compliance team led by Durcell Cox We the RAD wish you and everyone a very happy new year and a very, very happy holidays. A very happy holidays. Okay. If anyone have any questions or any, I'm open. And
Any
it's good to
questions?
see you.
I will reinforce with you your starting comments about the Inspire event. In fact, I meant to mention it when I started talking, but I thought it was, I want to compliment the staff and all the work that they did to provide that event, which was very successfully presented and well attended. And it was really a great show in terms of just the presentation of the space. Everybody, I think, was overwhelmed. I also got a chance to sit down with you
Yes, you did.
and had a good conversation. And I said to Mrs. Washington that I was really, really very proud of her in seeing the way she has grown as the president of the RAB board, because of the fact that she's a lot more confident in how she presents the positions of the RAB board, and she feels a lot more that we are here to be your friends.
Thank
and
you
support-
so much.
support
I
what you do.
appreciate it.
And that, I want to just compliment you about that. And
Thank you.
thank you
I
for your
appreciate that. And I appreciate all your patience with me and all. And as we go on for the next 3 years, you'll see a more growth in me. And I thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you.
I could go now.
Yeah. You're now free. We'll move to the next item, which is a report from our president. And so I'll turn to you, Ms. Andrews.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, the HOC team, and the public. I'm pleased to share highlights in regards to our activities in the month of November. We will provide a spotlight on our Inspire celebration that you've just heard a little bit about, highlights from our Resident Services Division, updates from our Housing Resource Division, Real Estate Development Update, as well as Maintenance Division highlights. Before we go to the next slide, I do want to acknowledge we are at the last month this year. In prior presentations, I would do a year in review. We're going to do that in January so that we're able to capture what happens here this month as well. So when we return in January, we will give an overview of all of the activities we accomplished in 24, and also looking forward to a refreshed and a new approach in terms of presidential report outs as we think about how we spotlight and highlight our work around the strategic plan. So this presentation will be modified quite a bit as we enter into 2025 so that we're able to make sure that the public and the commission are apprised of our activities. With that, I will move to the next slide. We definitely had an outstanding event. And it wasn't just an event, it was all of the work leading up to this event in terms of outreach, trying to ensure that all of our partners, stakeholders understood and appreciated this very important milestone moment for both the agency as well as our nonprofit. We were successful in raising $225,000. As the commission knows, the dollar for dollar of this fundraising effort and all of the HOCP funds go directly to our programming. And this is the sole source for programming for our residents. So we want to continue to thank our donors. There were 60 major donors, and think through other ways to continue to support our residents' programming. And as you can see, there were 2 agencies or organizations that have been wonderful partners for us, Arts for the Aging and Yellow Boomerang, who received the Shauna Sorrells Memorial Award at the event. Next slide. We also wanted to acknowledge someone who has been a great advocate and representative of HOC for many years. She was appointed, Sally Roman passed away recently, but she definitely made her mark. She was appointed to the HOC Commission in 2007, excuse me, and she helped the agency move through the RAD program. She transitioned to our nonprofit Nonprofit Board and served on that commission or that board from 2017 to 2022. She helped with the formation of the HOC Academy. That's all of the work we do around our adult education and our STEM programming. And she retired as chair from the commission in 2017, was named on the HOC Housing Honor Roll in 2018, and lived a wonderful life of service. And we wanted to just thank and acknowledge her, and of course, send our regards to her family. Next slide. Our resident services team continues to really emphasize the importance of providing programming for our residents in partnership with many of our key stakeholders and partners. You see us spotlighting Arts for the Aging, who you hear about every single month, and the work and the support we receive from University of Maryland School of Nursing and helping our seniors. And you see the many dates and times in which they've come to provide programming across our portfolio. Next slide. Our Service Coordination and Community Engagement Division hosted many activities as well, mix and mingles, holiday assistance, Thanksgiving holiday assistance at various properties, and ongoing socials, bingo, etc. And it's included in more detail in the report. Next slide. As well as field trips when available, and ensuring that we're able to support our residents who are in need of nutritional and food support through our partnerships. And over 400 residents were supported in that way. Next slide. We have a wonderful partner in Piano Pals who helps provide complimentary piano classes to our children. And you see that we also had some programs, one in the gym here, our high school drone robotics workshop that we did in partnership with City of Gaithersburg, as well as an additional FAA trust certification program for drone flights that was completed for our adults. Next slide. In regards to the Housing Choice Voucher Program, we have 100 families that are currently searching. We have many contracts that are under and pending execution. There was one request for an extension. Next slide. We continue to report out in regards to and encourage residents to utilize Rent Cafe. You will see that there were 53 families that were recommended for termination. Of the 53, 26 are continuing, and you see outlined the reasons why. And we always continue to work with our residents if we're able to locate or contact them prior to final termination. Next slide. We're very pleased to share that we have continued to advance the preservation efforts in Bethesda, and we were successful in acquiring Battery Lane. This particular preservation acquisition will ensure that there are additional 254 naturally occurring affordable apartments in Bethesda, and this is a part of another assemblage that we've been able to advance in the Bethesda area. Next slide. And then our maintenance team really has undergone some great efforts through the leadership of Vice President Sean Asbury in terms of thinking about partnerships. Montgomery College partnership has allowed our maintenance workers to get additional training. Here you see that they've recently undergone some training related to electricity training. And we also, the Vice President accompanied the county executive in a tour of that facility. Next slide. With that, I open for any questions or comments.
Any questions? Any questions? None. Thank you very much, and we look forward to the report in January. Thank you. We'll next move to the next item, which is the Commissioner's Exchange. Any information to the exchange between commissioners? No conferences attended?
No.
Yeah. Very well. So with that, we will move to the next item on our agenda, which is the approval of the minutes. These are the approval of the minutes of November 13th, open session, and also approval of the November 13th closed session meeting. Can I get a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Probably moved and seconded to approve the minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. So ordered. So next move to the committee reports and recommendations for action. And I must say that I think that the agenda today for our committee reports is one of the first times since I've been on the commission where the administrative and regulatory committee had the lion's share of the items for discussion. And it's a very turnaround. So with that, we'll proceed with the first item on the commission's report for the Administrative Regulatory Committee, which is the authorization to implement voucher payment standards based on the fiscal year 25 small area fair market rents. And we just earlier today concluded a public hearing, the final public hearing related to this matter. So that I feel like I've heard this now three times. But again, I want to turn to our president, Chelsea Andrews, for discussion.
Thank you. Commissioners, this is a standing item that comes before the commission on an annual basis. We are a part of a small cohort of housing authorities that are able to look at and use small area fair market rents when setting our voucher payment standards, which allows us to have a level of nimbleness in terms of determining what is best suited and ensuring that we're able to maximize the ability to balance, ensuring that we keep our reserves as well as reduce rent burden as much as possible. The team does an extraordinarily complex analysis that was presented previously to ARC committee in regards to every single zip code and makes recommendations related to our payment standards. They have made the recommendation here that we advance for this next fiscal year at a 110% payment standard. I will turn it over to our Vice President of Housing Resource Division, who I know is supported by her team, to provide this presentation. Lynn Hayes.
Thank you, President Andrews. Good afternoon, Commissioners. For the record, I'm Lynn Hayes, Vice President of the Housing Resources Division. With me is Kashif Paul, our financial analyst. Kashif is going to present this item today.
Good evening, everyone. For the record, my name is Kashif Paul. I'm the financial analyst for Housing Resources Division. Today, we are here to request authorization to establish the Housing Choice Voucher Program voucher payment standards for calendar year 2025. Slide number 3, please. So annually, the Department of Housing Urban Development publishes fair market rents used to establish voucher payment standards for the Housing Choice Voucher Program. Voucher payment standards represent the maximum amount of subsidy that HOC can pay landlord on behalf of our Housing Choice Voucher Program. So FMR represents the cost of rent a dwelling unit, including the utility allowance and the cost of utilities to the local housing market. So HUD required the use of small area FMRs or small area fair market rents in 24 designated metropolitan areas effective January of 2018. So the voucher payment standard may range from 90 to 110% of the published fair market rents and are established by the PHAs. So our team recommend that the commission join our recommendation to approve the voucher payment standards for calendar year 2025 to be equal to 110% of the published small area FMRs for all zip codes and all bedroom sizes effective January of 2025. Slide number 4, please. So with these these recommended voucher payment standard will reduce the rent burden of our families by 16%. With these recommended voucher payment standard will allow our families to have access in high opportunity areas where while increasing our program utilization and maintaining a reserve balance of 10% of HOC annual budget authority. These recommended voucher payment standard would reduce HOC risk of recapturing funds from HUD held reserve while maintaining the recommended balance of 4 to 6% of HOC annual budget authority. So this slide shows that this year our staff used HUD tool of 2 software and Excel data to determine the recommended voucher payment standards. To the comparative analysis resulted a comparable outcome projecting voucher payment standard at 110% of published fair market rents. HOC is required to establish payment standard in all 71 zip codes of Montgomery County pursuant to small area fair market rents guidelines. Please go to slide 8. Okay, this slide shows the notable increases in fair market rents. Overall, the FMRs increase in all zip codes and bedroom sizes, with the exception of one zip code, which is 20882 Gaithersburg. The fair market rents increase an average of 12% in all bedroom sizes, increase the range from $70 to $870, with a notable increase in zip code 20889 Bethesda. The majority of housing choice voucher families reside in 2-bedroom units, followed by 1-bedroom unit. Next slide, please. Go to slide number 11, please. All right, this slide shows the top 15 zip codes with the most rent burden families we have. 18% of our families are rent burdened. As proposed, an increase in payment standards for the calendar year 2025 would result a significant reduction in our rent burden families. Next slide, please. As I mentioned before, like our team has done some detailed analysis using different percentiles. So in this slide, you will see different percentiles with different values, and shows how many families will be rent burdened, what will be the projected per unit cost change, what will be the reserve balance, and what will be the at-risk amount in the last column. So the proposal for the voucher payment standard for calendar year 2025 is to apply 110% small area FMRs across all zip codes and bedroom sizes. HOC will be able to alleviate the rent burden from the majority of its families adopting these recommended voucher payment standards. HOC would eligible for re-benchmark of its funding based on calendar year 2025 expenses for the future, for the next year. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the growth in our utilization, where we are now and what we are projecting for the next year, and it also shows the expenses and the projected funding obligations we're going to have. So we are projecting that we're going to have a 3% increase in our program utilization by the end of calendar year 2025. Next slide, please. So today, our team is requesting that the commission support staff's recommendation for approval of calendar year 2025 voucher payment standards to be at 110% of the published small area FMRs for all zip codes and all bedroom sizes. At this time, we will address any questions you may have.
The committee met with staff and reviewed this matter. And we voted to advance this to the full commission with our recommendation to approve the recommended staff recommendation. So with that, I'm gonna open up any questions you all may have.
Yeah, no, I will support this, and, you know, I'm glad to see that, you know, we're maximizing the opportunity to, you know, reduce burden, since it's a high rent county. I did have a few questions, just partly around the reserve balance, and I was curious, so I guess going back to slide 12. And so I see, you know, this leaves us with a projected reserve balance of a little over 13 million. I was curious, what's our current reserve balance?
The current reserve balance we have as of October, it was $10.2 million.
So, okay, so this would leave us with additional reserve balance. And I guess, you know, so I mean, I don't know, you know, given that we're maxing out with the 110%, I'm just wondering, like, is there more that we could be doing to, you know, reach 100% utilization? I mean, I know we need some reserve balance for emergencies, and we may have some budget situations this year, but you know, do we have a target for what our ideal reserve balance would be? Or you know, I don't think we want it just growing indefinitely. We want to be able to use that.
Yeah, the recommended balance is 4 to 6% towards your annual budget authority.
Right.
And which is approximately about like $7 to $8 million. And with that, even with the $13.3 million in reserve, we are still at risk by using all our funding. We are still going to be at risk of $6.8 million when we did our analysis. But when we did our analysis, it was based on our assumption that we're going to be fully funded for calendar year 2025 by HUD with the 100% proration. But, you know, without knowing that, you know, what will be the proration is going to be for calendar year 2025. So we took that approach, and we look at the history that previously we were funded 100%, but not sure for the next year. But
So,
we just,
yeah, if I could just interject, commissioners, when we do this exercise every year, at this time, we don't know what our funding award will be.
Right.
However, we recently received information that the Senate bill is recommending a proration of 97.5%, and the House bill recommending 88.6%. So if that applies, and so I think we're projecting or anticipating the 97.5%. We will reduce our reserve balance to
by
$5 million,
$5 million
with
approximately.
funds at risk of being recaptured.
So we go down from 13 to 5.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Mhm.
Again, we don't know what the amounts are, but this proposal was made assuming 100% proration. If once we know our funding, if we want to request a higher or an exception payment standard, we still have the opportunity to do that with HUD.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that actually leads me to, I think, one of my other questions, which if you go down to page 14. Oh, actually, no, I guess it's sorry, on the well, it's the reference to the table for the 2024 BPS. So that's on page where'd it go? Oh, it was, let's see. Oh, okay, it's page 18. Sorry. Yeah. And I was just, could you remind us, like, we were able to go up to 117% last year. So, and what was that, because we requested some,
We requested a waiver last year, and in order to receive that waiver, we had to have an excessive number of families who are rent burdened or a success rate lower than 70%, I believe.
Okay.
And so this year, luckily for us, right, our payment standings are helping our families. Last year, 23% of our families were rent burdened. This year, it's been reduced to 18% of our families who are rent burdened. So again, the opportunity is still there. We don't meet the criteria for rent burden, but for the success rate, we could opt to have that option if we wanted to require a higher rate. But I think we were waiting to see what our
Right.
funding levels would be and if they're prorated or not.
Given that it might go down, and
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so. Just a technical note on this table. I think the fiscal years for some of the columns need to be corrected. Because it has 22 and 23 in there. So like the second column and the fourth and fifth columns reference fiscal years 22 and 23. So
Oh, so apologies. We just didn't change the heading.
I was able to figure it out.
Yeah.
So,
Sorry about that.
that's all right. And then I think, well, you mentioned success rates, and this is part of, I guess, a little bit of a question as well for the next discussion. But what is the success rate for tenants that receive a voucher in terms of actually being able to obtain a lease?
It's right now 60%.
Yeah. Close to 60%. How does that compare to?
I think we recently met with our HUD field representative this week. And I think we have higher success rates nationwide and our rent burden as well. We're doing much better than any other agencies. Yeah.
Okay. And then final question, comment. I guess mainly for the general public, we're talking about the voucher payment standard. I just want to confirm that this is different than the reasonableness assessment that we perform so that this does not mean that, every landlord in this zip code, each of these zip codes, that's what they will, that's what they could expect. There would be a reasonableness test for the actual property.
That's correct.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? I make a motion that we approve resolution 123, 24-95.
So moved. Resolution.
Yeah, 24-95. Second, all, probably moving second, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. So ordered. The next item to come before us, for us is in fact related to the health insurance voucher administrative plan and proposed revisions to that plan, specifically as relates to chapter 4 dealing with the maintaining our wait list. So with that, I'll turn to our president.
Yes, thank you. Commissioners, I want to make sure we frame this discussion appropriately. We have a huge project underway that we will present a more comprehensive recommendation and presentation on as it pertains to our overall wait list. The overall wait list that involves both our properties and how referrals come from our properties, and that wait list that has close to 37,000 people, as well as our voucher program and a revamp and migration that will be forthcoming. Today, we will be focused just solely on the voucher program and the chapter changes, chapter 4, chapter 8 changes, 4 in particular, that are required pursuant to HOCMA. And you all remember hearing that acronym quite some time ago. Some regulations that HUD put out that require us to modify our plan and our policy, as well as recommendations related to how to best structure the voucher programs waiting list. And so I'm going to turn it over to our compliance team, both Darcel Cox, our Vice President of Compliance, as well as Elliot Rule, our compliance special analyst who's been working on this to provide this presentation.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Elliot Rule. I'm a Management Compliance Analyst with HOC's Compliance Division. I'm here today to discuss proposed revisions to Chapter 4 of HOC's Housing Choice Voucher Administrative Plan, specifically establishing preferences and maintaining the wait list. HOC provided a comprehensive overview of recommendations to the ARC on our Administrative Regulatory Committee on November 24th, and will now provide a summary of these revisions to the full Commission. Revisions to Chapter 4 include waitlist structure and management updates, regulatory updates pertaining to the new HOCMA regulations and the Inspire inspection standards. Additionally, it included reorganization of the chapter, addition of new language, and removal of obsolete or outdated language. We're going to highlight 3 policy-related revisions for commission discussion and approval, and these include the use of 3 separate housing choice voucher wait lists, removal of applicants from the wait list, and purging or cleanup of the wait list. Next slide. So first, we're going to highlight the 3 policy-related revisions, and I'll stop after each slide in case there's any questions or concerns. Next slide, please. HOC proposes the use of 3 separate wait lists to enhance the efficiency of managing applicants. This structure will not place additional burden on current or future applicants. These wait lists include the tenant-based voucher wait lists, and these are the vouchers that are transferable and can be used anywhere throughout the county. The project-based voucher wait lists, where the subsidies are tied to specific units of properties throughout the county. And then also a new mainstream disabled wait list, which provides vouchers for our non-elderly disabled community. And the main reason for proposing this structure is due to the complexity of selecting applicants from these 3 wait lists. Next slide, please. Or I'm sorry, do we have any questions pertaining to the proposed structure? All right, so the policy revision number 2 deals with removal of applicants from the wait list in certain situations. And I will note up front that removals are reversible, and HOC will revisit situations on a case-by-case basis. So HOC added clarity to existing language pertaining to applicants who fail to declare continued interest in the program, basically renewing applications at intervals set by HOC, and applicants who are unresponsive to attempts to contact them after selection. In these 2 circumstances, we must be able to move to the next applicant as quickly as possible. As required by HOCMA, HOC adds clarity to the current policy of removing applicants from the project-based voucher waitlist after being offered and turning down 2 opportunities without good cause. And we did add language in the chapter defining what good cause is. Are there any questions about removing applicants from the waitlist?
Is this okay, I'll hold my question.
That's no problem. The third policy related revision deals with purging, cleaning up the wait lists. And again, I will note that the removals are reversible, and we will revisit situations on a case-by-case basis. HOC is proposing updates to policy on purging or cleanup activities under certain circumstances, and we list several examples. So first, we have decreased lease-up ratios due to non-qualified or uninterested applicants, high numbers of applicants that don't meet occupancy or preference requirements, and then income qualification issues, which is primarily going to include applicants who have incomes that are higher than the voucher income limits. Do we have any questions about purging or cleanup?
Any questions?
Go to the next slide, please. Yeah, next slide, please. Okay, so in addition to the 3 policy related revisions that we just went over, we also made a number of other revisions to improve readability, enhance the flow of information, and increase clarity. And that included chapter restructuring, additional language, and the removal of obsolete language. Next slide, please. So one of the major aspects of the Chapter 4 revisions was restructuring of the chapter. The most important part of that was the reordering the sections that affect applicant selection. So you can see there's 5 sections listed there, and we reordered them so that they're now in order of relevance. So the waitlist preferences section introduces the 4 sections below it. And so first we have local preferences, which are applied to the whole voucher program, project-based and tenant-based. And then we have targeted selections, which do have preferences tied to them, but they are for smaller groups of vouchers within our portfolio, and they do come from the waitlist. And then we have special admissions, which are similar in that they are smaller groups of vouchers with preferences, but they do not go through the standard waitlist process. Those are typically referred directly to us. An example of that would be the VASH vouchers, the Veterans Administration. And then we have income targeting, which is a HUD requirement that we maintain new admissions at a certain percentage for certain income limits. And they're primarily focused on the extremely low income ones there. Another major aspect of restructuring was the local preferences section. So we currently have 6 local preferences in there. Only 2 of those are true local preferences that apply to the whole voucher program. And that's going to be displacement and residency. So the other ones were sort of relocated to the appropriate chapters. And one was removed because it's no longer active. Next slide, please. So in terms of added language, we did add a lot of language to the chapter for clarity. And again, you'll see the selection related sections that we discussed before. We add a lot of language to each of those sections just to really explain what they are and exactly how they work. And then under the targeted selections and special admissions sections, we did add some program and regulatory information for the specific voucher groups within those sections. And there were some minor references to housing quality standards. So we added Inspire because that'll be coming into effect soon, but none of the Inspire language in this chapter was significant. Next slide, please. And finally, we have the removal of obsolete language. So there's just general antiquated waitlist references. And then there was 2 sections that were just no longer active. So we removed that language. Next slide, please. So just to recap the items for consideration, we have the 3 policy related items that fall under the waitlist structure and management. And that includes the use of 3 separate HCV waitlists. Clarification on situations where applicants may be removed from the wait list, and purging or cleanup of the wait list. Additionally, updates included restructuring, added language, and the removal of obsolete language. Next slide, please. And of course, whenever we do revisions to the administrative plan, there's a process that we have to go through. So we did follow that process. Next slide, please. Staff recommends that the commission approve the proposed revisions to Chapter 4 of HOC's Housing Choice Voucher Administrative Plan. I'll be glad to answer any questions at this time.
Again, we had a hearing, it's a meeting with the Administrative and Regulatory Committee, and we recommend this item to go forward to the commission with the support of the staff recommendations on this one. Any other questions from the commissioners? Jeff?
I had more questions, but seem to have lost my notes. So unfortunately, couple questions that I do recall on reasons for good cause. I was curious, to what extent with project-based vouchers, I don't know, are tenants able to identify, when, apart from, project-specific wait lists, they're on the PBV wait list generally, are they able to specify parts of the county where they're able to live? And I guess the question is really does good cause, doesn't list it in here, but does it include something like if, a tenant or an applicant rather is offered a voucher in, North County, and they don't have access to transportation to their job, or it's, and it just doesn't, it's not a good location for them. What's, how do we treat that?
Would you like me to read the good cause? I do have it here. And this is HUD language that we added in there.
You can read it. As I recall, it did not include anything like location.
Right.
So
And let me just pause. So the definition of good cause is pretty standard in terms of what we've been provided related to the basis under which someone might be able to express a reason for reconsideration, right? Reasonable accommodation, incapacitated. And the question you're asking is one in terms of geographical preference. I offered you a unit in Clarksburg. You declined it, but I don't count that as one of your declines. And I would say that currently our policy does not allow for geographical preference to be good cause in terms of how it's counted towards your number of offers. But I'd have to defer to and ask, unfortunately, my team to weigh in here. But as it stands, you get 2 offers. What we're recommending in the future as we move through, you'll see a different approach. For example, when we go through our overall wait list management, and we're thinking about how to target people for scattered sites or PBRA, where we are able to identify geographical preferences, there'll be more of an opportunity in that cleanup to have a more targeted approach. But currently for PBV, if you're offered a PBV unit, you decline it, you're offered another, you decline, then you're taken off of the PBV waiting list. You always remain, and one of the things we didn't say earlier is you do remain on the other waiting list, in particular, the voucher waiting list. So no matter how many times you may decline anything, you will remain on the voucher list until selected.
And this assumes that they will somebody will sign up for all 3 or at least 2.
Right, and generally speaking, everyone has signed up for the voucher waiting list. Most times they've signed up for the voucher waiting list and then plus others. This exercise that we will undergo here in 2025 will be a great effort to ensure that people are signed up appropriately for the programs that they're eligible for and able to express what properties as well as geographical preferences they have.
I had another question on purging, but I don't remember it at the moment. I did have a question. I know, and I apologize, I don't have the language in front of me, but some of the things that would raise you to the top of the list. Special preferences. Thank you. And local preferences, right? Some of those were removed because there are special programs, now for some of those. And I guess my question is, what happens if, whether it's a veteran or a homeless individual, and if none of those vouchers are available? I know right now we don't have 100% utilization, but in the event that we had 100% utilization, and there wasn't, we couldn't direct somebody, who was homeless to one of, would they just then go to the bottom of the wait list?
Currently, our voucher program is set up where generally speaking, there are no preferences other than a local preference, a local live work preference for everyone on the list. This is something with the exception of special programs where we have a voucher for veterans.
We previously had language in there, no? Because it said we were removing it.
Well, so for example, and I'll allow the compliance team to tie in, but just for example, what we just approved with mainstream vouchers, we're not able to have a local preference. So where it wasn't applicable or where you can't have a local preference, we've made those changes. I'll turn to the compliance team if there were any other spaces where we took away a local preference where it wasn't required?
No, so the only two local preferences we've actually had that applied to the whole voucher program were the displacement and residency local preferences. The other ones got lumped in there. They weren't actually local preferences that applied to the whole voucher program. They're smaller voucher groups within our portfolio. They got lumped into that, and they should have been in the special admissions or targeted selections categories. The first two apply to the whole program. The rest of those two shouldn't have been lumped in with that. local preference
So
chapter.
you're saying the language we had in there that listed them sort of as a local preference, they weren't actually local preferences and they were mischaracterized or miscategorized?
Yeah, they didn't apply to the whole program.
Okay, so we're not actually removing that as a preference? So,
Those voucher groups still exist, but we just really.
and am I hearing you correctly then that it is not an option for us to have that as a local preference, like so for homeless individuals or families? If, you know, obviously first they would be directed to the special vouchers. But if there were no special vouchers available, what, you know, would a homeless individual or family have to then get in line?
As it stands, yes, and a part of the exercise that we will undergo when looking at our overall wait list management is, does the commission want to advance any preferences or priorities across the portfolio or even for specific programs for certain populations? The commission may choose that it wants to prioritize people with housing instability. It may choose that it wants to focus on rent burden. We could choose to focus on so many different populations. And a big part of the next level of this presentation, there will be an opportunity to reimagine and explore the potential and the pros and cons of having various priorities or preferences for the waiting list.
How he's thinking, Chelsea, well, not Chelsea, but it was told to us that the preferences you didn't in your taking out, they still can work and live in Montgomery County, and that is a preference. Am I correct to say?
Yes, the residency is one of the actual local
Okay.
preferences. The other one
I thought that's
displacement is there's a natural disaster that the county can refer people to us.
Elliot, can you please explain what it means to have a residency preference? And Lynn, can you please come to the table as well and sit where Darcel is to be able to answer questions in terms of how we handle this on a day-to-day basis? Thanks.
So the residency preference in the voucher program, our residency preference is live or work preference.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to live or work in the county either at the time that you applied on the wait list or at the time you're selected. So if you're selected or somewhere else, you can provide documentation that you were working or living in the county at the time you applied.
That's what was told to us. Thank you.
I think that's where there was some confusion in the conversation earlier. So can you give the difference between residency, which you just said, versus the other preference that you said that they were inappropriately categorized, a location preference? Can you give that?
Yeah, so those other groups, they're smaller groups of vouchers that HUD awarded to us. And so for example, there's veterans vouchers, not VASH, but veterans vouchers. We do have some vouchers in our portfolio that have a preference for veteran sites, and then we would select them from the wait list based on what people put in the application and then confirm that. So that's an example of one of those. I think really what happened was that HUD, when they awarded those vouchers to us, they'll sometimes give us multiple options of preferences we can pick for that group of vouchers. So if it's homelessness, it could be homeless, at risk of homelessness, exiting an institution, and they give us sometimes give us the freedom to choose based on what our needs are in the county, which one we want to apply to that group of vouchers. And I believe that's where that may have that confusion may have come from.
Just to add, I believe the way the current plan is written, what is categorized as a preference really, as Elliot mentioned, is not necessarily a preference, but criteria for a specific population of allocated vouchers. And so it was, I believe, structured as such because there were points allocated so we could select the right individuals to meet that award that we were selecting for. So an example would be, there was, let's say, an award of mainstream disabled vouchers. And so it was coded as a preference, and those families on the wait list were allocated points. So when we were selecting for that allocation, they would be pulled from the list in order of the date and time of their allocation. And so the criteria still exists, but as Elliot mentioned, it really is just a rewording. It's not a technical preference per se.
So,
Sure.
one of the other questions I think I had to do with so with the policies of removal and purging, which makes sense. So it would be based on, you know, an applicant not meeting the qualifications. And I guess I'm curious what our process is when an applicant actually submits their information. Is there no initial screening of whether they are actually qualified? And so can somebody go on our wait list, enter information that does not meet the qualifications, and just sit there, and then when their name comes up, that we wouldn't have made any kind of evaluation prior to
Yes.
that?
So anyone can apply. And the actual verification is not completed until they're selected to verify that they meet the program criteria.
So how would a removal or a purge be conducted? Because I'm looking at the criteria, you know, decreased lease up ratios, high number of applicants who do not meet occupancy or preference requirements, income qualification issues. You know, if we were going to do a purge, does that mean, you know, we would, even if an applicant's name had not come up, we would then go into the list and start making those evaluations? And is there a reason, you know, I know we don't want to do the full verification, but if somebody has entered information, I mean, I guess I'm not sure I understand how the purge will be conducted, whether it's just going to be based on what they have entered, or whether it will be based on some kind of full verification, which seems burdensome on staff. And if it is just based on the information that they have entered, why isn't that done sooner?
I could respond here. So when an individual submits their information, and by the way, you may recall there's also a requirement that you maintain accurate, up-to-date information on our waiting list, so that we're able to assess what your needs may be when we're doing our call-ups. So let's say you have an active application, you just updated it yesterday, you told me that you have a two-family household and you make X amount of money. And we're ultimately, once you gave us your compensation that you receive, it's far outside of the range for any of the programs that we administer. What is being proposed is the ability to purge. That means to remove that individual from the waiting list if there is a need for us to do that, because we need to get to a closer, realistic list of people who are actually eligible for a program when we're making and doing call outs. If you get removed from our waiting list, you do receive a notice advising that you've been removed from the waiting list, which triggers rights. You have the right to grieve that or to request reconsideration to demonstrate that you actually do meet the requirements. But ultimately, you're able to stay on the list and then go through that full process when you get pulled. When we actually verify your data and everything at that time, there's actually only a short window of time in which we're able to even rely on that data as not being stale. Next month you get a new job or you lose your job or you have a new baby. Like so many things change and happen. So the work of actually verifying what someone's real compensation is, how much their other assets are, their household size, that happens much closer to the time when we're actually.
I understand that the actual verification
Mhm.
is not going to, but on what basis would we be doing an evaluation for a purge? I mean, it doesn't sound like we would be doing the actual verification. We would be looking at the data they have entered in their application. Or am I not
No, that is
understanding?
correct. And I think one of the things we'll have to make sure it's very clear when people are submitting their information is we're asking them to use a level of veracity in doing that.
But that, I mean, so somebody could be entering accurate information
Mhm.
that it just doesn't qualify.
Right.
And so I guess I'm wondering why there isn't something that automatically.
Oh, that's because our current system does not allow for that feature. And so what we're going to be migrating to and talking to you about in the future is the ability with Yardi to do that upfront determination that says you're actually eligible for the following programs. But as it stands, we have waiting lists that have individuals who may or may not meet the criteria. And in order to be able to get to a point where we're able to be more effective, we're proposing limited scenarios in which we would need to conduct a purge. Again, making sure that people are apprised of the fact that if they contest it, can get back on, won't lose their date and time on the list in doing that, but needing the ability to undergo that exercise.
And are you suggesting though that, so I understand we don't have the ability currently to do that automatically, to have the software conduct that analysis, but to do a sort of a manual screen would be too burdensome or would trigger certain.
No, the manual screen is what happens, but to maintain people on the waiting list, let's say there's 10,000 people who make $200,000 plus. You're probably not eligible for our programs, but you're on our waiting list, and therefore there's this number one misrepresentation of the number of people on the waiting list, right, that are eligible for our programs. There's the glut and the time and the energy that it takes to keep screening it down to the people who actually meet the criteria for these different programs. Our hope is, and in this exercise, we worked with a consultant to make sure that we have verbiage that is one in alignment with HUD requirements, which required us to give explanation on good cause and number of offers, etc. So we did this cleanup, but there will be another opportunity as we think about what the migration looks like, what the communication looks like, and how we administer the waiting list as a whole that we'll be undergoing here in the future. And a part of that includes a full, an opportunity to really scrub our waiting list, for us to get in touch with every single person and make sure that they are appropriately reflected on the waiting list and maintain that moving forward.
But as new people sign up, I understand like there's the existing waiting list, and it doesn't sound like we have been looking like as somebody applies, we're not looking to say, oh, you don't actually qualify. Until we get the automatic software, does it make any sense to at least do that with new applicants?
I don't believe we have the capacity.
Okay, that was sort of what I was asking. Okay.
I was gonna say, most authorities who do purging and waiting lists is because it's not based upon the eliminating anybody because of eligibility. It's because of the fact you've got a waiting list with 37,000 people You're saying, how many people really are really legitimately want to still be on this waiting list? It's 5 years old, it's 6 years old.
Yeah.
So we'll send you a note that says, if you're still interested in having your name remain on the waiting list, respond within a certain period of time. If you don't respond within a period of time, they may take your name off. And then you have the right to appeal. That's all it is. It's really downsizing the waiting list to people who really are still interested in the program. And then the test becomes when they get really pulled from that waiting list, determine they want to be able to look at, determine whether they qualify for that program. That's really what's.
Yeah. No, yeah, the rationale makes complete sense. I'm just trying to understand. Final question, I think, right now is, so the revisions talk about, though I think it's more of a moving around of language, maybe you can educate me, but adds language about closing the wait list. And I think was there language in there about closing the wait list before, and it's just been moved around, or?
What we discussed in ARC was previewing that overarching, and this is, I knew it would be difficult for us in terms of bifurcating the conversation, but in ARC, we did talk about the holistic next step with the big wait list. And that's this whole project that we'll be undergoing in 2025. Those materials were inadvertently included initially for this commission packet, but now that part of the presentation is not here because we're just focused on chapter 4.
Yeah. So, but chapter 4 includes, managing the wait list, opening, closing, and maintaining the wait list. So closing seems to be a new addition to that heading, and there's language in there
Well,
that states, that the president, should the president, HOC's president, decide to close the wait list.
I looked to the team. I thought that was the language that was actually there last year, previously as well, in regards to the notice requirements of the commission if ever we were to close the wait list. It might have been relocated, but there's always, should have been, indication in regards to what HOC's policy would be if we were to close the wait list. Right now, there's not a recommendation to do that. But there should be still verbiage, and I'm not certain if that was relocated, but it should have been in the prior language. The agency always had the ability and the right to close with proper notice. And so
I guess the question I want to ask is just, that's a decision that would have to come before the board, right?
absolutely. That's a decision that will come before the commission that would probably also entail a huge amount of stakeholder engagement. Yes.
There was some existing language and some enhanced language.
Speak, Elliot, can you speak up?
Oh, apologies. There was some previous language and some enhanced language with the revisions.
I don't have any additional questions.
Any additional questions? If not, can we get a motion to approve resolution 24-97? Authorization. It's been probably moved and second to approve resolution 24-97. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. So ordered. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
We will
you.
now move to the third item under the Administrative and Regulatory Committee's reports, which is the one to, in fact, adopt a new policy for the mainstream disabled voucher program, which we kind of like talked a little bit, specifically about that, but that was in the 3 tranches of different breaks out. The earlier one,
Yeah.
the mainstream voucher program. So with that, I'll turn to our president.
Yes, commissioners, we have approximately 194 mainstream disabled vouchers that we administer to support non-elderly disabled individuals in our county. HUD recently published a notice that provided some new mandatory guidelines as well as discretionary guidance. And here to walk you through our recommendations is the Vice President of our Housing Resource Division, Lynn Hayes.
Thank you again. Good afternoon, Commissioners. The Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2024 authorized the Department of Housing and Urban Development to establish alternative requirements and waivers for the Mainstream Disabled Voucher Program. Mainstream Disabled Vouchers are special purpose vouchers for non-elderly persons with disabilities. HOC has an allocation of 194 mainstream vouchers, of which 116 are currently utilized. HOC must adopt mandatory alternative requirements for the administration of the mainstream voucher program. We also have the option to adopt permissive requirements for the administration of the mainstream disabled voucher program. We presented this policy recommendation to the ARC meeting on November 25th, 2024, which they supported our recommendations. Next slide, please. HUD PIH Notice 2024-30 establishes statutory and regulatory waivers and alternative requirements for the Mainstream Disabled Program. Effective December 18th, 2024, HOC must implement the following mandatory changes as outlined in the notice and identified in Chapter 8 of our administrative plan. We must issue the initial voucher search term for a term of 120 days for mainstream disabled families. Currently, we issue our vouchers for 90 days for all other housing choice voucher families. For the mainstream disabled program, we must approve the first extension request for a minimum of 90 days. For all other voucher households, we approve extension requests in 30-day increments. The voucher extension requests for the mainstream disabled families may be submitted verbally or in writing. Currently, we don't accept verbal requests for extensions for any other voucher families. A search record is not required for mainstream disabled families. We require a search record currently for all other voucher families with a minimum of 10 entries showing that they've made good faith efforts to secure a place to live within the voucher term. Additionally, we are now required to conduct outreach to mainstream disabled families prior to their voucher expiration dates to inquire if they need assistance with their housing search and also inform them how to request an extension if necessary. And lastly, we cannot apply the residency preference to mainstream disabled families. So the requirement to live or work in Montgomery County is not applicable for mainstream disabled applicants. Staff are proposing that the Housing Opportunities Commission adopt the proposed mainstream disabled policies to comply with the federal regulations and also provide community-based integrated housing to non-elderly persons with disabilities. Again, we presented this information to the Administrative and Regulatory Committee on November 25th, 2024. We presented the information to the Resident Advisory Board on November 18th, 2024. We also published the information for public comment on November 4th, 2024. And at this time, I will take any questions that you have.
And we also concluded the public hearing on this matter today.
Yeah.
The final action to close is the public hearing, publication requirements for the program changes. As it's been indicated, majority of these changes being are HUD mandated.
Right.
For the administration of this program. So it's not like we have we're not discretionary in that regard.
That's right.
With that, can we get a
I have some questions.
your questions? Okay,
Yeah,
go ahead.
sorry, it's the one committee I'm not on, so you get to have opportunity to ask my questions in committee. And just a couple of questions, I think, on this, or 2 or 3. So I'm just confirming, we have the right to establish separate preferences for MSD applicants, but we are not.
We are not. So we have 194 allocated vouchers. All but 15 of those allocated vouchers are for families who are homeless, at risk of homelessness, in a segregated or institutionalized setting or at risk of institutionalization. Our first award for mainstream vouchers was in 2006. It was 15, and it was only the requirement to be non-elderly and disabled. The subsequent allocations through more recent or later NOFAs required the homeless or at risk of homelessness. So we didn't recommend any preferences.
Okay. I will note, just going ahead, looking ahead at the resolution. The resolution includes language that says, whereas HOC will establish the discretionary change to establish separate preferences for MSD applicants.
And so that was referring to the wait list that which the compliance team just presented. So with this notice, we can apply two discretionary options, a separate waiting list, which Elliott and Darcel presented, and then additional preferences.
So we're referring to the wait list as establishing separate preferences in the
We're
resolution?
Referring to the wait list as establishing a discretionary preference, a discretionary change, because we don't have to have a separate.
I guess I'm
wait.
just wondering whether,
Oh, I see. Yeah,
Yeah.
I see. I think that meant a separate wait list. It shouldn't be preferences.
Okay, we'll make that modification.
okay,
Page, will make sure that's reflected in the revised.
okay,
resolution.
thank you. And then, with the separation of the wait lists, I don't know what the risk of this actually happening is, but like, is there any reason that, if that an MSD applicant would not sign up for HCV? Is there any reason we would maybe want them to automatically be listed in that wait list as well?
They would be. So if they're currently on the housing choice voucher wait list, they would automatically be placed on the MSD wait list in the same order of the date and time of their application to the housing choice voucher program. And if we create the separate wait list, again, it would not affect their place or position on the tenant-based list.
Okay, sorry, the packet says the option to select the HCV or MSD program.
That's right. So they could select one or the other or both.
Right, so I guess I'm just saying, like, if, is there a reason, like, if they select MSD, would we want them to be automatically listed on the HCV?
I don't.
Right now, we don't automatically put people on the voucher list. You have to select the voucher as something that you're interested in.
Right, right now, if they sign up for it, they're automatically on
Mhm.
both, right? Or,
Right now, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the end of it.
well, I guess since there's only one wait list
Right.
now.
Right.
So one of the advantages of having a separate wait list is that they're now aware of the availability of a mainstream disabled. Right now, they don't know. So
Okay.
they just apply for a regular tenant-based voucher. As we get the awards, then we select people who are non-elderly and disabled, but they don't know the difference. So this is actually, I think, a good thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And similar to question I asked earlier, do we know the success rate for families that are offered MSD vouchers?
I don't, but I can get that for you. We can try
Okay.
and pull that data.
Okay.
Sure.
I don't have any other questions. And if there aren't any, I guess I would move to support resolution number 24-96 with the change to refer to establish separate wait list instead of separate preferences.
You have a second?
I second.
Okay, been probably moving in second. All in favor signify by
Aye.
saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed is nay. So ordered. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The
Thank
next
you.
item on the administrative regulatory agenda is for the approval of the third amended and restated bylaws for the commission. I would turn to our president for this.
Yes, Thank you. Commissioners, this is a housekeeping matter in regards to ensuring that your bylaws are compliant with federal rules and regulations. I will turn it over to our general counsel who's joining us virtually today, Asha Menon, to provide this presentation.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Ashton Memon, General Counsel to the Commission. We have a relatively simple request before you this evening to make a small change to the bylaws. The bylaws currently provide that a commissioner can temporarily serve as the executive director in the event that there's a vacancy. This provision is actually in conflict with a couple federal regulations regarding conflict of interest, and the amendment that we're proposing simply removes that language. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Just to, I guess you all heard her. This is simply, this was referred to, as you all remember, when we were doing the HUD compliance review, they said that we were not in compliance with the HUD requirements on this matter because we could not serve in the president's position on it. So that's what this would do, just amend our bylaws to remove that allowance that it has now. Any other questions? Can I get a motion to approve resolution number 24-98?
Second.
Probably moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. So ordered.
Thank you.
That concludes the item for the Administrative Regulatory Committee. We will now go to the Development Finance Committee. I'll turn to Commissioner Merkowitz.
Thank you. And we have one item on the agenda for this committee, and that has to do with the approval to amend a financing plan for the Leggett and to issue loans. And I will turn it over to President Andrews.
Thank you. Commissioners, as you all know, the Leggett was easily one of HOC's most ambitious projects. It involved the development of both the residential 267 senior property in downtown Silver Spring, but also the delivery of one of the largest amenities in our county, the South County Recreational Aquatic Center. And in this combined construction and development, there were inherent delays that resulted in us needing to postpone our permanent financing and closing of the Leggett. I will turn it over to our mortgage finance team who has recommendations before you in regards to ensuring that we maintain compliance with both our lender and our bond requirements. And Victoria Dixon, our senior multifamily underwriter, will provide this presentation.
Good evening, Commissioners. For the record, Victoria Dixon, senior multifamily underwriter in mortgage finance. I'm here to request the amendment of the financing plan for the Leggett with additional funds and actions to accommodate increased costs associated with the delays to close out the transaction. The Leggett is a 267 unit age restricted apartment community recently constructed in Silver Spring and formerly known as Elizabeth House 3. In 2019, HOC closed into construction financing of the property with the issuance of tax-exempt private activity bonds, which proceeds were used to fund a construction of permanent mortgage loan. A taxable construction loan with PNC with an extended maturity date of December 31st, 2024, using the real estate line of credit with PNC to provide $33.7 million to bridge receipt of LIHTC proceeds and $22.2 million of subordinate loan debt from HOC. If you move to page 3, as mentioned, despite best efforts due to a variety of factors outside of HOC's control regarding construction delays and slower absorption, closeout of the project has fallen approximately 17 months behind schedule. This has adversely impacted the property's ability to achieve stabilization and convert into the permanent financing phase for endorsement under the FHA risk share program or to release LIHTC equity in the time frame originally projected. Based on current absorption, the property is expected to achieve stabilized occupancy by February 2025 and permanent conversion to be achievable before June 2025. In order to execute on resolving these delays, amendment of the financing plan and supportive actions are hereby requested to extend the construction period, provide sufficient funds to curtail the construction loan, funding closing costs, and delay commencement of amortization. Moving to the next page, proceeds of the construction loan are being used as cash collateral for the bonds until the permanent FHA risk share mortgage is available for substitution. Such cash collateral will be used to repay the $3.6 million of short-term bonds, which are subject to mandatory tender and payable to the bondholders on January 1st, 2025. Initial terms have been obtained by PNC. That would include to extend the construction loan maturity to 6 months to June 30th, 2025, requiring a like-kind pay down of the loan amount by the $3.6 million on January 1st, 2025, and payment of legal expenses estimated at $10,000, but with no extension fees and with all other terms remaining unchanged. The provided table represents a summary of the $3.6 million request for temporary proceeds of the FHA risk share reserve to make such pay down to PNC and closing costs, including estimated consulting fees from our bond counsel and HOC's financial advisor. Staff has confirmed sufficient property cash flow and accrued cash is available to service the construction loan through the extension period, while investment income from the cash collateral has been confirmed sufficient to pay bondholders. Moving to page 5. Therefore, in order to execute on resolving these delays and provide sufficient funds, staff recommends, with support of the Development and Finance Committee, for the Commission to approve Resolution 24-99 for amendment of the financing plan as presented to include extension of the construction loan with PNC to June 30th, 2025, amendment of the mortgage loan to extend the date required for permanent conversion to occur by June 30th, 2025, and therefore delay the start of amortization, issuance or amendment of the HOC loan by $3.6 million, which will be funded by way of the FHA risk share reserve until repaid by LIHTC equity contributions, extension of the bridge loan to September 30th, 2025, and the borrower and HOC to negotiate and execute loans in accordance with the finance plan. Are there any questions?
That's with the other items. This one actually came before the Development and Finance Committee, and where I did get an opportunity to ask my questions. So I don't have any additional questions here, and we did support this for the full board. But are there any other questions?
Forgot to ask at TFC, was the cash fee at closing that was estimated or budgeted for the stated developer fee? You've got a deferred fee if you go back to page 4.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Maybe I phrased it wrong. Under uses, there's no stated deferred fee, stated developer fee. I didn't know. You can tell me later if you don't know offhand.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's I'll have to double check.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking is with an estimated $3 million adjuster, I'm curious.
Okay, we can follow up.
Thank you. And I assume the 620, 662 of interim income as a permanent source will dwindle because you're using that to support the new debt. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Thank you. I look forward to getting a note from you. I have any questions.
Is there, right?
No.
Is there, no? Okay. If there are no additional questions, I will make a motion to approve Resolution 24-99.
It has been probably moved and seconded to approve Resolution 2499. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. So ordered. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pursuant to sections 3-305B and D of the General Provisions Article of the Annotated Code of Maryland, I move to adopt the written closing statement dated December 4th, 2024, and adjourn this open session to a closed session to discuss the financing plans, loan terms, and other financing matters for 3 properties located in Bethesda, Maryland. The reason this topic is being discussed in closed session is to protect confidential commercial and financial information provided to HOC from third parties. The statutory section that allows this meeting to be closed is section 3-305B13. If a member of the public that's watching this meeting in real time on the YouTube wishes to object to the closed meeting, please comment in the YouTube chat box or contact HOC's General Counsel. Instructions can be found in Open Meetings Act objection procedures, which is posted on HOC's website. Do I have a second?
I second.
Probably moving second to approve going into closed session. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers, nay. So ordered. Thank you. Meeting adjourned. We will now go into closed session.
Thank you.